Welcome back. You're watching Beef TV live from the beef capital. And here from the bush capital is the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Thank you for coming on Beef TV.
Oh, great to be here. What a fantastic event this is. It was
a nice weather change.
Oh, it's a bit warmer than Canberra, let me tell you. The frost has started in Canberra in the morning already and the fog drifting in. So it's very different to wake up pretty early this morning, I've got to say, and the magnificent sunrise over the river, and it's just beautiful blue skies here.
Yeah, it's always a cracker on the Fitzroy. Now, good to hear you haven't come empty-handed. You've announced this morning $520 or $19 million for the Future Drought Fund. Is this new cash?
What it is a new commitment, changing the way that the Future Drought Fund operates. We had a national forum last year, and then we had a consultative committee set up, including chaired by one of the former heads of the NFF, and we consulted extensively. And what we heard was that the Future Drought Fund's great for responding to drought, but sometimes if you get ahead of an event, that makes more sense. So allowing this funding to build resilience, not just of individual farms, but of communities as well, is what this funding will be used for. It will start from July 1. It will be in the budget next Tuesday, and it's been really well received because that hard work of consultation has come through.
Now, it's a bit warm here today, but it was a bit frosty last night. I saw you got a bit of a frosty reception on live export when it came to the compensation claims for the class action. Why can't we just get this resolved?
Well, we should. The former government was there. You might have noticed, of course, we all noticed, I noticed the hard way, for 3 terms and didn't get it done, didn't settle. We've got an offer on the table for the settlement. We want it to be resolved as soon as possible. This is, of course, a legal matter, but I noticed Tracy last night, I think, gave a very good speech. She's a strong advocate, and she spoke really well about the difficulties that people had gone through now for well over a decade now. We want it to be resolved.
There's a long way between where they are and where you guys are at. You've been offering $250 million without costs or interest. They want 500 plus costs and interest, which could be up to around $900 million, we're told. So there's a big divide. When can we expect that will be resolved? We know you've asked for a delay.
Well, there are legal processes that will go through, and those negotiations...
Actually, isn't it just more a settlement now? The court's directed that the...
Well, and those negotiations will take place. With respect to Beef TV, they probably are best not to take place live on TV. We want to resolve it. We're committed to a resolution, and I hope that happens as soon as possible.
Beef producers will say live export underpins the entire industry, and that's why it's so important to them. They're having a look over the fence at WA at the moment when it comes to sheep, which is obviously your government has committed to ending live export there. They're telling me that producers are looking to start shooting their animals because that's what it's come to. Throwbacks to the market crash of the 90s. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I don't want to see any farmer undergoing hardship. The only political party that's called for a pause in the live cattle trade is the LNP. That's the truth of the matter. When we had the issue with Indonesia, what my government did was work with the Indonesian government. I personally spoke with President Widodo. We engaged with industry to ensure that the industry and the trade could continue through some pretty simple measures, like having people wipe their feet as they come through an airport from Bali. But in terms of sheep, though,
they're having a look what's going on there, going first it will be them, then it will be us. Are you comfortable with what's happening with sheep at the moment?
Well, the industry, of course, you've raised 2 separate issues. There's nothing that the government is doing that is causing sheep to be put down. That is not anything to do with the government. The government does have a position of phasing out of the industry. The live sheep
And
export
beef have
industry.
nothing to worry about?
No, absolutely not. They're very different industries. The live sheep industry, they're smaller animals. It is more difficult to achieve positive outcomes. They're longer journeys as opposed to the journey to Indonesia and to Asia in our region. The industry has done a fantastic job of making sure that animal welfare is looked after, whilst it's a very successful industry. As I said, the only call for a pause of the live cattle trade was made by the opposition during that issue in Indonesia. We made sure our bona fides are there for all to see, and the work that we've done and will continue to do with industries there as well. On the live sheep trade, we've said that there needs to be a phasing out of the industry. We need to look at a transition. We need to look at what support can be given to industry. We need to set down
compensation
timetables, including how you have a transition and support for that as well. One of the things that's happening in the market is that the size of that live sheep export industry is going down as the increase in lamb exports, in products, sheep products, has been increasing. So it is an industry that's changing. It's one that we want to work with industry on. We'll have announcements not too far away on that, but will be characterised by providing support for that transition so that jobs can be maintained and so that producers can continue to earn a living.
Prime Minister, let's turn to some issues of the day. The supermarket pricing probe inquiry in the Senate, that comes out today. Will you adopt and implement every recommendation in full?
Well, I haven't seen what it is, so I don't give commitments to adopt things that haven't been released yet, let alone with due respect to the Senate. Some of the things they come up with sometimes are good, sometimes not so good. You often see a coalition of the Liberals, the Nationals and the Greens voting together these days for reasons that are often perplexing, it must be said. But we'll have a look at the report on its merits. We've already had the report from Dr. Emerson, and we will have the work that the ACCC has done. Our objective is twofold. We want to make sure that farmers get a fair price for their product, and secondly, we want to make sure that consumers get a fair price at the checkout.
Now, we've already seen from the quarterly figures released from the supermarkets at the end of last week, prices have actually been reduced somewhat. Some would say the political blowtorch has helped that.
I have no doubt that that's the case, that there's been a focus on that, and the outcome is there to see in the data that was released just a week ago.
So what happens next then? Because once, these inquiries end, the pressure allays somewhat, can we expect to see prices come back up, or what action needs to occur to ensure that isn't the case?
What needs to occur is two things. Firstly, a proper examination of the voluntary code of conduct and whether that needs to be mandated or how it needs to be changed. We'll examine that and we'll make an announcement at an appropriate time in consultation with the ACCC. The second thing, it's clear to me that we need more transparency across the supply chains so that farmers can see what the price is that they're getting for their goods and how that translates through transport and then retail as well. So I think that information being transparent and available will do a lot to make sure that everyone gets a fair crack here. Because we understand retailers need to operate, but we do need, I've said very clearly the idea that you would have compulsory de-investment of, if you have Woolies and Coles in one town, if you force divestment, Woolworths or Coles in that town, I mean, who's going to buy it? You're going to end up with one, or you're going to end up with, what are the consequences of that, including the consequences for farmers? Because when it comes to producing, or when it comes to the retailer buying product, then obviously some scale should be of assistance. It shouldn't be a negative.
Couple of quick ones. Budget. You guys are going to get it in better nick than what had been forecast, about 152 billion, was it, better than what the debt was going to be? How do you ensure that you ease some of those cost of living pressures, but also guarantee you don't further place pressure on inflation?
Well, that's the task before us, and it's a task that the Expenditure Review Committee I've sat in literally, it mightn't be hundreds of hours, but it must be close. Over many months since my EFO, making sure we address cost of living pressures, and you will have seen some of the announcements that we've made, wiping out $3 billion of student debt, providing support for people to do nursing and to do teaching and other areas of skill shortage. The drought announcement that we've made.
Have your inflation forecasts changed at all?
Well, in fact, inflation is lower. The annual inflation rate is lower than it was anticipated to be in my EFO in December.
But your forecasts, have they changed at all?
My EFO, well, you'll see forecasts in the budget, which wouldn't have even been settled yet. They're usually done at the last minute. It's a week away. So it's the most up to date. But the forecast in my EFO was for inflation to be at 3.75 by the end of the financial year, and it's at 3.6. We inherited an inflation rate. The quarterly rate in March 2022 was 2.1% in one quarter. We turned a $78 billion deficit into a $22 billion surplus. So we've been responsible. So you won't see big cash splashes in this budget because that would be counterproductive. What you will see, though, is measures that make a difference for cost of living, and of course front and centre of that, our tax cuts for every single taxpayer, not just for some, making sure that across the board it's providing that assistance, which has been well received, it must be said. In the first 48 hours, the opposition said that they would reverse it. Peter Dutton called for an election to be called on it, and then they voted for it, because it's good policy. That was a gutsy call by the government, but it was the right call done for the right reasons.
China, obviously more aggression occurring again. Are you concerned this will inflame trade tensions?
Well, we need to make sure that we have a mature response. We've indicated very clearly that this is unprofessional and unacceptable. We've communicated that very directly to Beijing and through Canberra as well. We'll continue to do that. But I was asked earlier today, will that mean that you don't talk to the Chinese Premier who is due to come here? And I said that dialogue is always important. It's important we communicate, whether that be communicating areas of agreement or areas of disagreement. We know that there are differences between the Australian and the Chinese political system, but it is important that we're able to have that dialogue, to have that communication, because out of that comes understanding, and we know the alternative. The former government couldn't have a phone conversation, let alone meetings, but we will. I've said we'll agree with China where we can, we'll disagree where we must, but we will engage in our national interest.
Just lastly, we've got a quick pop quiz that we're doing for everyone.
Here we go.
It's called Playing for Cattle Stations. We've got a scoreboard
you got the
here
bell there?
From medium to raw to well done, sorry. So this is where you do poorly. Little Proud's currently on the bottom of the ladder, so don't feel bad if you don't do well. And this is well done. Ferner has done well because he sung live on air. So that is your backup plan.
He sung live on air.
He did, a bit of Chad Morgan. So 5 questions in our pop quiz. 5. So, Mr Albanese, according to MLA, how many head of cattle are there in Australia in 2024? It's multiple choice. 55 million, 100 million, 10 million or 28 million?
Sorry, what were the numbers?
55, 100, 10 or 28 million?
55.
28.6 million head this year. That's okay. What's the most popular Macca's burger, beef burger in Australia? You did used to flip a few burgers.
I did. I worked at Macca's. I can name all of them. And I can also do, they've got a quiz on at the moment, an ad which when I was a kid, I went to school in St Mary's Cathedral in the city in Sydney, and if you said 2 all beef patties, special sauce, those cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, you got within, I think it was 20 seconds or something.
You get it for free or something.
You get it for free. So all these St Mary's kids used to go into Macca's on the way home as we walked to the bus stop, and we got barred, which was very unfair. So I noticed they've got the same competition on at the moment.
Well, St Mary's kids don't line up too much.
Indeed.
So what's the most popular beef burger from Macca's?
Well, it's got to be the Big Mac, doesn't it?
It's a cheeseburger, actually.
Cheeseburger.
Sorry, but I hear you lay off the Macca's these days.
I do.
Now, Carpaccio.
Do I get a bonus point for being able to say?
Go on, I'll give you a bonus point if you can get it one more time.
2 all beef patties, special sauce, those cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Macca's, here's your guy.
I get one.
Question 3.
I get the point for that.
You will, sorry. Question 3. Carpaccio, koi soy, and Ossenwurst are all what type of dishes? Carpaccio, koi soy.
They're raw.
Correct. 2.
That was an easy one for an Italian.
Well, that's what I was hoping. I had to give you one. Okie dokie. We are playing a speed round now. You have to name the politician under the Akubra.
Oh, hang on, I can't say.
Sorry, apologies, Prime Minister.
That is Katter.
Correct.
Bob.
Next one.
Oh, is that Ferner?
No, it's our main man, Barney.
Barney, well, I try and erase him. I didn't recognise him because he was vertical.
He was vertical.
Too soon?
Well, there's a few planter boxes around here, and I know Barney's getting about, so we'll see how he goes by the end of tonight. Who's this one?
That's me.
Correct. There we go.
There you go.
Congratulations.
So I get that. Ring the bell.
Sorry. You can ring the bell now too. Prime Minister, just quickly, you've got a wedding coming up. Do we have a date, and is beef on the menu?
We don't have a date, but I'm sure beef will be on the menu.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. We're off to a break.